Guys, good morning. Today we're going to go over some rookie mistakes that, man, we'd like to get around.
You better get fired up.
Guys, happy Friday, man. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you joining me. If you've got any questions or comments along the way, whether you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, feel free to put them in the comments and we'll absolutely get back to you before the end of this video. I put up a post, I believe it was yesterday on Facebook, and it had a long list. It was 30, 40 issues that I have seen either myself or another agent deal with throughout their careers in the middle of a transaction. And a lot of these can be averted if you've got the experience to avert them, right? I see these issues with for sale by owners, and I see them with rookie agents all the time. So I thought, man, why not put out a video so rookie agents can see this, hopefully get over some of these through my words rather than their experiences. And I can share some of these with some people who are trying to sell their homes themselves so they can see some of the things that they need to prepare for in efforts to sell their home themselves, right? So going through some of these things, the first thing I wrote was appraisals falling short. It happens. I wouldn't say it happens often, but I would guess it happens maybe 5-10% of the time. The higher the price point, the bigger chance there is that it's going to happen. I'll tell you, I've had it happen 13 times in the last 4 years. And what that means is whatever we agreed on a price, whatever we agreed on for price, the appraiser came in and said it was worth less than that price, right? So now funding is based on that lesser amount. So we've got to work with that difference, right? You might have to have the seller drop the price. The buyer might need to come up with additional cash. A lot of different things we can do. But what I have found is experienced agents know all the tricks. They know all the solutions. They've got all the different choices, options, paths forward, and they can present them clearly to their clients in efforts to get the best solution out of their clients and put it together. And I'll tell you, out of those 13 that fell short, 12 of them were put together, right? A lot of rookie agents are going to have a tough time keeping those together, but really it comes down to understanding your options and knowing what you can do moving forward. So again, if you're a newer agent, ask your broker, ask your team leader, ask me what your options are in that situation. I'll give them to you. And if you can communicate them up front, especially if you can communicate it to your buyer when you're putting the offer in that, hey, this might happen. Here's what happens if it does happen. And to your seller, hey, we might get you that great price because we're marketing the heck out of it. But if we do, we're going to risk appraisal shortage. Here's what our options would be in that situation. If you can prep them mentally beforehand, man, an ounce of preparation is worth a pound of issues you're going to have to deal with later, right? Yeah, buyers wanting more repaired after inspection than a seller is willing to repair. Again, here, expectation management. If you can sit down with your buyer and show them what a beautiful house has an inspection repairs, right? I tell you, I had a beautiful home the other day. It was a year-old home, and it had 71 pages of issues. And I'll tell you, I think that inspector was a little crazy. There were things on there that didn't need to be on there. But my point isn't to point out the inspector. My point is to point out the fact that even beautiful houses have issues. And if you don't prep a buyer for that, especially a first-time home buyer, they're not going to be ready to say, hey, I'm going to overlook some of these normal things. When you purchase a home, I say this to every buyer. When you purchase a home, there's an expectation that you're purchasing it with normal wear and tear, right? There are things that you're going to want to fix or whatever. And I'll give you some examples. Weather stripping on a door. That's something that you're going to have on almost every listing ever sold. I would say probably 70, 80% of the listings that I sell, there's a weather stripping issue, right? You're going to have a cracked tile somewhere if it's got tile flooring. You're going to have a cracked tile if you've got tile roofs. A 1-year tile roof is going to have cracked tiles, right? Cheap, easy fix. You can put some epoxy over that and boom, it's good, right? But if you don't know that and you don't prepare your buyers for that, the expectations may be different than what you're expecting as an agent, and now you're going to have problems with that, right? Yeah, here's another big one, and I've even had agents not understand this. As is, there's an as is contract in Florida, and then there's another one, I forget what the name of it is, but nobody ever uses that other one. Everybody uses as is. A lot of people think as is, and understandably so, means you're purchasing the property in the condition it's in. No negotiations can be made. It's as is. That's not what it means. A normal contract dictates before the inspection even happens how much, either as a dollar amount or a percentage of the asking price, or I'm sorry, the sales price, what that seller is going to commit to fixing some of these repairs. In the as is contract, it does not state a specific number. It says if you put a number in on line 261, which is the inspection contingency line, you can get an inspection and you can negotiate if you want. But the seller can say no. They can say yes to half of it and no to the other half. They can do anything they want. A buyer can say, hey, I'm good with the inspection. The buyer can walk. My point is it's negotiable, and a lot of sellers don't understand that. So they get the offer, they accept the offer. All of a sudden, the buyer's agent comes back with things that they want fixed, and the seller throws a fit. And it's not the seller's fault, and it's not the buyer's fault. And while I don't want to say it's somebody's fault, I would say the listing agent, had they mentally prepared that seller for expectations, they would have been set up a little bit better, right? And a lot of people will put in the remarks, agents, seller's not going to fix this, this, or this. You can put that all day long, but unless you put it in the contract, it doesn't matter what you put in the MLS, right? So if that's something the seller is saying he's not going to do, put it in the contract. And now you've got something that's legally binding. Yeah, communication. And I see this a lot. When you get agents who are part-time agents and they got a full-time job or a part-time job, I've seen things fall apart, even with my own deals, where it's a challenge because you need things to move in a timely fashion, but that person's working a double today and they're not going to, reach out until tomorrow. And it's 8 a.m. today and you're like, man, I need this done now. So that can be challenging too, right? So you want someone who's going to communicate with you quickly. Buyers not getting escrow deposits in on time. There are other states where closing dates, escrow dates, are suggestions. They're not quite as strict as Florida. In Florida, that escrow date, which is usually 3 days after the acceptance of an agreement, that's a hard date. If you don't have it in by then, you are not in contract. You're out of contract, which means any other buyer can scoop up that house and you lose it. And there's nothing you can do about it because you did not get your escrow deposit in, right? Closing date, same thing. If you're a day late and there's not some hurricane coming through to stop you, some sort of mother nature issue, you can lose that house. You can lose your deposit. You can lose a lot. A lot of people coming from other states don't always understand that. And I hate to say it, but some listing agents don't understand that. So it's important to make sure that they get that. Yeah, here's another one I've seen too. You're the buyer's agent and you've got 5, 7, 10 days for your inspection contingency period. And the buyer says, hey, I want these 3 things. Okay, great. I, as the buyer's agent, send an addendum to the buyer. I get him to sign it. I have the intent of sending it to the listing agent, but I forget, or I'm moving slow because I'm a part-time agent and have another job. And all of a sudden, by the time I get it over to the other agent, we're a day or two past that inspection contingency period. Now, the seller, if they wanted to, could say, I'm not agreeing to any of that, and you're still going to close. You're beyond the inspection contingency period. Now the buyer's pissed. They got taken advantage of, or at least that's how they feel. Who dropped the ball? The buyer's agent, right? So it's really important you follow those. Here's the last one here's the last one that I'll bring up. When you've got a buyer, you're the listing agent, you've got a buyer coming in and their offer is contingent upon them selling their house before they can buy your house. In Florida, whatever that date is, doesn't mean it can't get canceled or fall apart or change or anything else. It can, but that date is the closing date. So if house 1 closes on June 1st, we can close on house 2 on June 1st or later, right? Well, in New York, they're an attorney-based state, not a title company-based state. So they have, I don't even understand it, but I'll tell you, I've had enough buyers who are contingent on the sale of their New York home, try to buy a home down here. And I always tell my sellers, listen, in New York, the attorneys just wake up one Tuesday and decide they're going to work. And then they tell the buyer and seller what the closing date's going to be. And even when they tell them, it's not always the date that it ends up being because someone else wakes up on a Thursday and says, I'm not going to close today. I'm going to close in 3 days. So I do not get it. I don't know how you can contractually sell a house like that, but that's how they sell houses. So I always warn my sellers, hey, you need to understand what these dates mean. And I also have that discussion with that buyer's agent to help them understand, like, listen, maybe it's very fluid up in New York, but down here, if we have contractual dates, if you don't hit these dates, you might lose the deal here. Just make sure your attorney's aware of that. If you're trying to get an update by calling the attorney up in New York, or I'm sorry, calling the real estate agent up in New York, those agents don't know what's going on in a lot of situations. They'll say you need to call the attorney. Whereas down here, the agent is the one running the show, right? It's just different. If you don't know that as a listing agent, man, that could be challenging for you if you talk your sellers into accepting an offer that's from a buyer who's contingent on the sale of their home in New York or a state that's run like New York. Guys, there are just a couple examples of things that rookie agents can kind of get into a bind on. There's a ton of them. It's a complex business, right? It's challenging. I get asked all the time if I think Chat GPT is going to take over the business. There's no way. There's no way, because even with all that complexity, if it can solve all the complexity, you've also got to intermix that with the different personalities and the different challenges and the different biases and the different emotional statuses of a human being. And in a situation or a transaction that big, something that they compare stress-wise to a divorce or a death, nobody wants a robot doing that for them, right? They want a human being who they can say, this person told me this person advised me this, I trust this person. And if they don't have that, I don't think a lot of people are willing to do that. So as long as we've got a complex business, realtors, and you make yourself valuable by understanding the complexities, you've got a great future ahead of you, right? But get in front of those complexities, learn them, role play them, and then get out there and help your clients. Guys, have an absolutely phenomenal Friday and an even better weekend. Take care.